This is every single fight to make after UFC 286, Edwards versus Usman 3. I have all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event. Leon Edwards defeated Kamaru Usman by decision, as I said he would. What a legend that man is. Leon Edwards is the winner. Now, the UFC have already decided who's going to get the next title shot. We heard a lot from Dana White in his recent interview. He said that Khamzat Chimaev is moving up to middleweight and will be fighting in October, which is so far away for some bizarre reason. He said that Belal Muhammad is going to be taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov. I know Leon Edwards wants to take on the winner of Burns versus Masvidal, but Dana White has confirmed many times, and he never does this, he's confirmed that Colby Covington is going to be getting the next title shot in the welterweight division. I would say, if anything, give Khamzat Chimaev the title shot, but I guess he's done a test weight cut outside of competition and he can't make the weight class anymore. So he's going to be moving up to the middleweight division. The UFC are pretty firm on this. They never do this. They never say 100. They didn't even do this for Volkanovski. But they never say 100% after a fight has happened that this guy is definitely going to get the next title shot. I think there's something going on behind the scenes that I'm going to make a whole separate video about, which may include the court case between Covington and Masvidal as to why they're giving him a title shot. I'm going to make a video about that later on because I think there's some real substance to that theory. But I think Colby Covington's going to get the next title shot in the welterweight division. I don't like it, but then also I don't like this either. Leon Edwards says, I don't want to fight Colby Covington. I'll fight Jorge Masvidal if he beats Gilbert Burns. Colby hasn't earned it. If Leon Edwards was saying, I don't want to fight Colby Covington, I want to fight Khamzat Chimaev, I don't want to fight Colby, I'll take on Belal Muhammad, he's earned it. I'd be a bit different about it, but you want to say Covington hasn't earned it. If Masvidal beats Burns, he hasn't earned it, and Covington's last win is against Masvidal, so you can't really say that. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel like I'm not really entirely on Leon's side of things when he says Covington doesn't deserve it. Covington doesn't deserve it, but if that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. And the UFC have been very clear. Shavkat versus Belal Muhammad. Chimaev is moving up to middleweight, probably to fight Robert Whittaker for a title shot. And then you've also got a situation where Burns is going to fight Masvidal, and they likely won't give a title shot to Masvidal if he wins. So yeah, I feel like they're going to do Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. They're going to look to come back to the UK at some point in the summer, and I think they're going to headline it with this fight, because let's be honest, as much as people don't like this matchup, it's compelling. I know Covington hasn't earned it. I really understand that, and it is annoying. It's compelling. It's competitive. People will be excited on fight week, regardless what they say in the build-up. When embeddeds come out, when the countdown comes out, when we get the press conference, the face-offs, and the fight's about to start, you'll have a real good feeling about this fight, and it will deliver. So I think that's what the UFC is going to do. They've been pretty They've been pretty strong on that stance. You know what I mean? We move on. Kamaru Usman lost in the main event. Now, I was confused because I was thinking to myself, who's Kamaru Usman going to take on in the welterweight division? Nothing. It just ruins his welterweight legacy, in my opinion. Right? Because if he takes on someone who he hasn't lost to before, you know, he could lose. He could win, but what does that do because he's no longer the champion? It doesn't add to his championship legacy. It still makes him a great fighter, but it doesn't add to his legacy. I think Usman needs to look at a different division. At this point in his career, he's already the second greatest welterweight of all time. He can still add to his GOAT legacy, just not at welterweight. If he takes on someone he's beaten before and loses, it ruins it for him. If he takes on someone he's beaten before and wins, who cares? I think he needs to move up to the middleweight division, and I think he needs to take on someone by the name of Dricus du Plessis. Am I right or am I right? This is the matchup. I originally wanted to do Dricus du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker, but Dricus du Plessis needs nose surgery after his last fight. He said he's going to get his nose fixed, and that's what he's planning on doing. I don't know if the UFC is going to entirely move a massive pay-per-view over to Africa because now they don't have the champions to do it. But I'm saying UFC Fight Night South Africa. August, July, September. Usman just fought and took a bit of damage. He's going to need a little bit of time off. Dricus du Plessis fought recently and he's getting nose surgery. So he's going to need a little bit of time off as well. Usman versus Dricus du Plessis in the middleweight division. They've got beef. Take it to UFC South Africa. I know the UFC can do that. They don't need a pay-per-view. That was the problem they were having. Is that they had all these champions, but they were like, man, we could make more money in Vegas. Man, we could make more money if we did a fight in London. They could do so many other venues around the world and make more money than going to Africa. A UFC Fight Night card, you don't need a stadium. You don't need a massive, massive arena. You just need a weekend. And Usman versus Dricus du Plessis would sell out in UFC Fight Night Cape Town or UFC Fight Night Pretoria, wherever the other place is. I don't think Pretoria is the made-up place in Family Guy, but whatever the place is, you know what I'm talking about. UFC Fight Night Cape Town would be amazing. UFC Fight Night South Africa, Kamaru Usman, Dricus du Plessis, they've got beef. They've been trashing each other over who the real African fighter in the UFC is. Usman says Dricus is white, so he can't consider himself African because Usman is Nigerian, so he thinks that's the only part of Africa. In reality, there's so many different parts of Africa that are very different than just Nigeria and that sub-Saharan area. But either way, Dricus du Plessis claims he's the real African in the UFC. He breathes African air. He was born and raised. He never left. I think there's some beef there, and we need to make that matchup happen, and then put Cameron Simon on the card as well, and JP Bays on the card as well. I guess he's South African, and a few other of the African fighters as well at UFC Fight Night South Africa. Make it happen. That's a great main event, and they've got beef, and it's also going to get Usman right to the top 5 of middleweight if he wins, looking for a title elimination bout. We move on. Justin Gaethje won in the co-main event against Rafael Fiziev. I didn't agree with the decision. I've rewatched the fight. I think Fiziev won the first 2 rounds, but either way, close enough not to call it a robbery. You know what I mean? It's sort of like an opinion-based thing. Do you give it to Fiziev based on the better shots and the more shots landed in round 2? Or do you give it to Gaethje because of the visible damage rule, the fact that he swole up the eye of Rafael Fiziev in that round? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you got to really look at the criteria and weigh up what you want to value a little bit more. Justin Gaethje won. That's settled. And I'm glad that he did, because now we can do Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. Amazing matchup. Absolutely amazing matchup. Really looking forward to it. This is definitely going to happen next, I think, because it just matches up so well. Dustin Poirier recently fought this year, I think, or was it last year in December? I'm not entirely sure. I think it was late last year that he fought, and then you got Justin Gaethje, who recently fought. He took a bit of damage, but I don't think he took so much damage to where he's going to want to be out of there for so long. We've seen Gaethje take damage, get TKO'd before, and really go to much worse depths of war than he did against Rafael Fiziev. You know what I mean? He didn't get his nose shattered or any cuts on his face, or didn't get dropped in any moment or anything like that. So I think we're going to see a much more active Gaethje. And I'm telling you right now, Jones Miocic main event, co-main event Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez, feature fight of International Fight Week, the pay-per-view in July, Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier 2. I know it's a 3-rounder, but that is selling pay-per-views. That would make that July card one of the biggest cards of all time, with a couple of other great fights added to it as well. Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier 2, the rematch. Winner gets a title shot in the lightweight division. And then the winner of Oliveira Dariush can get a title shot against Mokaev in the meantime. Let's make that fight happen and get it done now. No waiting around. Gaethje's getting old, 34. I think Poirier's the same age. Make that matchup happen. It's a massive, massive pay-per-view draw. We move on to another fighter. Rafael Fiziev lost in the co-main event to Justin Gaethje. Proved that he can hang for 3 rounds. Well, for 2, if we're being honest with ourselves here. The cardio's a bit of a problem. I'd love to see this just because they both lost recently and they're both strikers. Jarlin Turner. I don't think Jarlin Turner, because, I know a lot of people say, well, Gamrot took it on short notice. I was saying that as well. Gamrot took it on short notice, so he's the one who deserves the credit for beating Jarlin Turner. Jarlin Turner was training for Dan Hooker, a striker. He then got dealt the Mateus Gamrot card on short notice and was like, oh, now I'm fighting a grappler on 3 weeks' notice. I know Gamrot stepped in short notice, but That's a completely different style matchup that he wasn't preparing for. I think give him a striker again. Both guys coming off losses. Move Rafael Fiziev below Arman Tsarukyan and Mateusz Gamrot in the rankings, so we can have some movement there for Arman and movement for Mateusz Gamrot as well. And then you do him versus Jarlin Turner. They'll be right next to each other in the rankings, and it's a matchup that makes sense. Jarlin Turner just lost. Fiziev just lost. Do it in August. Fight night card. Co-main event. Fiziev versus Jarlin Turner. We move on to another fight on the card, which is Marvin Vettori. He won against Roman Dolidze in a very close fight, very controversial fight in some people's eyes. I thought he landed the way more effective and cleaner shots every single round. We move on to his opponent. He's going to need a little bit of time off, but I think this is it. Jared Cannonier. Vettori needs a bit of time off, as I just said. Jared Cannonier is the only man that Vettori hasn't really fought. He fought Paulo Costa. You know what I mean? He trains with Sean Strickland, so I doubt he's going to want to take him on. We just saw him lose to Robert Whittaker. We saw him lose to Adesanya twice. It's like there's not really many options for him. So I think you just sort of say, hey, Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier, this is the matchup we want to make happen. And the winner can get themselves in a position where they're looking for a title elimination bout. Maybe, just maybe, Whittaker Chimaev. Winner gets a title shot against the winner of Adesanya versus Pereira 2 or 5, if we're being honest with ourselves. Or 4. I don't even know. It's number 4. It would be number 4. Yeah. Vettori versus Cannonier. You do Whittaker Chimaev. Winner gets a title shot. Then you do Vettori Cannonier. And you also do Kamaru Usman versus Dricus du Plessis. Winners of each take on each other to get the next title shot early 2024 in that middleweight division. So that's like a semi-finals tournament for another title shot. You know what I mean? Usman, Dricus du Plessis, Vettori, Jared Cannonier. Do it around the same time in August, September, around that time, and then have the winner of it, or winner of them two, take on each other end of this year, start of next year, and then sometime in 2024 they can get their own title shot, the winner of that eventual Grand Prix. We move on. Gunnar Nelson got a really slick win. He doesn't want to turn around too quickly. I don't think he's really focused on being like an active fighter that gets right back in there. He didn't seem eager to get back in there. He said he wants to get back to coaching and just go back, and he has a comfortable life coaching, and he just got a performance bonus. He's on a good contract. He's been in the UFC for a while, so he's making decent money. He doesn't need to rush his career. Ian Gary wants to fight in April against someone. It's not going to be a high-ranked opponent because it's on short notice. If he gets that fight on that April pay-per-view card and gets it filled in and has that fight happen in April that he wants, then have him wait out and then have Gunnar Nelson versus Ian Gary on the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler main card. Have it open up the main card of the pay-per-view, and this is the big fight where if Ian Gary wins, you can give him a ranked opponent like Neil Magny or someone along those lines in the rankings. But I think that's what you should do. Gunnar Nelson, Ian Gary. Have Gary fight in the meantime against whoever they're going to feed him to. You know what I mean? Or whoever they're going to feed to him on the April pay-per-view, because no top-ranked fighter is going to be like, I'll take on Ian Gary outside the rankings on 3 weeks' notice in the April pay-per-view card. No one's going to do that. So they're going to find someone low down the rankings again. Gary hasn't really beat anyone that good in the UFC either. They've all been sort of bottom-level opponents so far. He's very young. Let's not rush him into the rankings. Let's have him beat an opponent. If he does and gets through it, Conor McGregor card. Gunnar Nelson, people know him through Conor McGregor. Ian Gary, the new Conor McGregor, people know him through Conor McGregor. He's the Irish guy as well. That'd be a perfect matchup where the McGregor fans are familiar with both of them. And it's also a really interesting matchup as well because Gunnar Nelson's slick with his grappling, and we need to see Ian Gary deal with that. We know his striking's good. Let's see him deal with the grappling of a Gunnar Nelson before we move him on to the top ranks of the welterweight division. We move on. Jack Shaw got a big win in the featherweight division in his debut. Someone else got a big win in the featherweight division. Win. Arguably could have lost, but either way. Lerone Murphy. Both in the UK. They're going to be coming back to the UK in the summer. I say if they do a fight night or a pay-per-view card, Jack Shaw, Lerone Murphy. I know Nathaniel Wood was supposed to be fighting Lerone Murphy, but he got injured, but he's already back to training, so I don't see him waiting until the summer to get another fight booked. I think he'll be looking to fight around May or June or April. Who knows? I think he'll be looking to get back in there pretty soon. But we got Jack Shaw, Lerone Murphy, both fought on the same card. Both probably going to be looking to come back around the same time in about 4 months' time or something like that, so put them on a card against each other in the UK. Wales versus England. I think it'll be a good matchup. And also, after Lerone Murphy's last few fights, getting taken down by McQuan in the first, and also getting taken down by Santos in this recent fight. I think I need to see him prove himself against another grappler before we give him a ranked opponent. But the winner of this fight, Shaw versus Murphy, should arguably get number 15 in the featherweight division as a ranking spot. We move on. Mokaev got a good win. Not the best in terms of a performance, but he had that crazy moment at the end that kind of saved it and showed how impressive he was to survive that knee bar attempt against Filho. He took a lot of damage in that knee. He's going to need to recover it, so he's going to need a little bit of time off. Another flyweight that needs a little bit of time off because he got KO'd recently that's above Mokaev in the rankings is a man by the name of Matt Schnell. He's ranked above Mokaev. I believe he's number 9 in the division. Mokaev might be number 12 or 13, something along those lines. I don't see Matt Schnell rushing to get back in the cage anytime soon because, again, he got dropped a few times in his last fight by Mateus Nicolau, eventually getting put out quite badly. And before that, he took a ton of damage against Sumedwerji. He's been KO'd a few times before that in his career as well by Pantoja and other fighters in that division. So, yeah, I see them doing Mokaev versus Matt Schnell. Give Mokaev a little bit of time off, though. A few months to heal up his leg. I don't think he's going to need a whole amount of time that maybe a 30-year-old would because he's only 22. So I think he should have a pretty reasonable recovery. But maybe if they're looking to come back around the end of the year, they can do Mokaev versus Matt Schnell. And that'd be a good matchup to make in the flyweight division. Schnell's not going to be looking to rushing to get back in there anytime soon. And he's also coming off a loss. So he doesn't really have any negotiation power to say, no, I'm not fighting Mokaev. Plus, it's an interesting matchup because Mokaev's been getting nearly subbed a couple of times in his fights. Schnell's got wicked jiu-jitsu, and on the feet, Mokaev's not too special, and Schnell is chinny, but that would be a compelling matchup in all areas of the fight. We move on. Jake Hadley got a wicked win over Malcolm Gordon, really made a statement with that liver shot TKO in the first round, took absolutely no damage whatsoever. I doubt he wants to rush. Sure, he wants to keep evolving as a fighter. So if they're coming back to the UK in June or July, whenever Aspinall's going to come back and Pimlet's going to come back, I'm sure they're going to try and do something in the UK with or without Leon. Maybe it'll be a fight night card in like Liverpool or Manchester or even London again. Who knows? But I'm sure they're going to try and come back to the UK this year a couple more times because of how many fighters we have. Jake Hadley should take on Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva coming off a wicked win over Tyson Nam. Front kicked him in the face and then choked him out. Really solid win. He's ranked number 15 in the flyweight division. He's on a 3-fight win streak as well. And he's got wicked jiu-jitsu. Solid on the feet with the hands as well. I think is a really interesting and tough matchup for Hadley that I'd like to see go down because I don't want each of them fighting backwards. And then maybe down the line we can get Mokaev versus Hadley because timing-wise right now with Mokaev's injury, it's not looking like it's going to happen. But we've also got Tatsuro Taira coming up. So we'll see who he decides to take on next. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.